Let's face it, weddings can be crazy expensive. Now in this video, I want to cover 8 different tips that I'm going to share with you, which I think if you used all of them could save you over $10,000 at your wedding. If we've never met before, hello, what's going on? My name is Durgi Spade, aka Magic MC. That's because I'm a professional magician and a professional wedding MC, and I have hosted hundreds of weddings over the years. And in my downtime, I like to create videos so I can share tips, tricks, and even checklists with you, so when you are preparing for your wedding, you'll be in good shape. You're not gonna wanna miss these tips right after this.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and I have the absolute pleasure to be your host this evening.
Welcome back. While you're here, if you're interested in getting a free ebook of mistakes to avoid when you're planning your wedding, go ahead over to weddingchecklistnow.com to grab your free ebook. Again, it's tips for you, a gift from me. Enjoy. So let's get right into it. The first tip you're gonna wanna think about is the DIY wedding. And I'm not talking about you having to do everything from scratch, but think about where are the areas that you might be able to save. Things like decor or even your wedding cake. If you are someone that's able to create decor that can be used around the venue, then this is a really smart area to start. You know, I did a wedding a couple years back and the bride's mother helped with decor, and the centerpieces at the table looked absolutely beautiful. She took 2 bottles, wine bottles, and made them face each other face to face. Well, I guess neck to neck, if that makes sense. Taped them together, painted them or put some kind of covering on it, and then decorated them with flowers. It's a bit hard to explain, but they looked like professional centerpieces you would find at a wedding. No one could tell, but it was incredible because they were made at home with spare wine bottle. Another spot you might be able to save is your wedding cake. If you or someone in your family you know is good at baking, that's something you might want to create or make at home versus spending $1,000 or more on a wedding cake alone. And to be completely honest with you, a lot of the times the guests don't even see the wedding cake, or if they see it from far away from their seats. They don't even get to see it up close. So this is one easy spot where you could save a little bit of cash. The second idea for you to consider is borrowing items. Now this kind of ties into our previous tip of DIY weddings. You can borrow items from friends and family and neighbors as appropriate. Now if you're having a couple of chairs, you need a couple of fancy chairs, well, instead of renting them from the fancy decor place, which might charge you a couple $100 for a couple of fancy chairs just for rentals, you might want to ask around and see if you're able to get access to them and borrow them for that one day. Tip number 3 continues on a trend of renting. This time it's renting your wedding attire, especially for grooms. I'll be completely honest, I'm not 100% sure if there is a concept of renting bridal gowns. And if you know the answer to that, maybe you can comment down in the comments below and let me know, hey Durgi, there's no such thing as renting wedding gowns, or yes, absolutely, you can rent it from here. But I can talk to you from the groom's perspective. Where I live in Toronto, Canada, there is a store called Moore's. I'm pretty sure it's across Canada. And there's other Moore's locations in the United States as well, as far as I know. And there you can rent suits, you can rent tuxedos, and it might cost you a couple $100. Whereas if you went to buy yourself a fancy tuxedo that you would use at a wedding, that might be $1,000, $2,000 or more dollars. So for a couple $100 to wear a tuxedo that you might only wear once on your wedding day, it might be a good idea to rent that as well. Tip number 4 is get a dual purpose venue. You know, I've seen a lot of couples that will rent separate locations to have a wedding and then afterwards have their reception. Sometimes they're not even in the same day. And ultimately, when you're renting 2 locations, it comes down to dollars and cents, and it's gonna cost you a lot more. Now, 24 hours ago, as of filming this video, literally 1 day ago, I was doing a wedding where they rented out a nice space on a golf course. So they actually had the wedding right on the golf course, and then immediately after moved indoors for the actual wedding reception. But at least in this case, they only had to have 1 venue, which again will be cheaper than having 2 separate venues, something you might want to consider. By the way, if you're enjoying these tips, keep on watching, because the last tip I have is probably my most favorite and one that will save you the most. Tip number 5 is skip the fancy champagne or the fancy wine. I'll be honest with you, I've done a ton of weddings where there is nice champagne that gets served at every single table, or maybe even wine. The truth is, 98% of people will not know the difference between a $15 bottle of champagne and a $100 bottle of champagne. Yes, I made that fact up right now, but based on experience, most of your guests will not be able to tell, and so that's somewhere you might want to consider perhaps sticking to the cheap stuff, because 98% of your guests probably won't even know. Tip number 6. You're gonna wanna find vendors which have a la carte options. You see, there's some vendors out there, photographers, videographers, that have these packages that are $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 packages, but the truth is, maybe you don't need everything in their $6,000 package. Maybe that gives you, 10 hours of shooting with 2 photographers, but maybe you don't need all that based on your requirements. Maybe you only need 1 photographer, and maybe you only need them to cover 4 hours of your reception. So again, ask your vendors about what a la carte options they can provide you, so you don't end up overspending on items you don't really need. All right, tip number 7 is back to the DIY theme. We're talking about invites this time. That's right, you can DIY your own invites. I promise you, most of the people, when they receive their invites, will look at it. They might stare at it for a minute or 2, note down the dates and the times, but most of the time, those invites end up, I hate to tell you, in the trash. I want you to think about the last time you went to a wedding. When you received the invite, what did you do with the invite? Unless it was a close family member, a close friend, it probably got thrown out. And again, I hate to tell you, most of your invites will end up in the trash. So there's no reason to be overspending. If you must get them printed professionally, no problem. I would stick to the low cost options. There's even some online businesses that provide this service at this point. If you don't want to stick with a professional option, guess what? Paper is super cheap, and you can create your own invites, especially if you're having a wedding on the smaller scale and you've got the time to do so. All right, tip number 8, my final tip, and honestly, I think this tip by itself could save you over $10,000 or more depending on your situation. And that tip is, consider the day that you want to get married. You see, where I am in Toronto, Canada, the typical wedding season lasts from about April all the way to maybe September or October. Now, if you're willing to get married outside of that season, you are going to be very pleased with different discounts different halls might be able to offer you. The truth is, there's not a lot of people booking weddings in Toronto in the middle of January. If you're open to that, there's quite a bit of savings to be had. When you are booking your wedding, you might consider booking it outside of season, so maybe in January, like I said, but also consider the day, as in the day of the week. Saturdays are the most popular days when it comes to weddings. I promise you, a Saturday in peak wedding season is very hard to get a discount on. That's because if a venue or a vendor doesn't book you, they will book someone else. Those Saturdays are highly in demand. Now, if you ask about a Friday or Sunday, vendors, including venues, might be a little bit more flexible. But if you really want to maximize your savings, ask them what they can do for you on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, because chances are if your venue doesn't book you on that particular Tuesday, they probably won't book anyone else, and it'll be a bit of a waste for them on their calendar. So dig in, ask the details, and get the savings you deserve. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks so much for watching. I am sure if you follow everything that I've provided you here, you could save up over $10,000 by following these tips. By the way, I release more tips and tricks and wedding checklists even for you to consider to help you with your big day. Don't forget to get your free ebook over at weddingchecklistnow.com. That's it for me from now. I'll see you next time.